Welcome in, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about the Transcendence upgrades that are coming out this week, and we are going to specifically talk about some of the older units. So if we scroll down here, way down, we can see that there are a bunch of units that are getting transcended this week, but we are going to skip the global exclusive. One, because we don't know exactly what's going to happen with Dwayne, Fravia, and Zazan. We do know what happens with Starlight, Elena, and JP, but I actually don't know if we're going to get exactly what they got or not. Sometimes these units have slight differences on the different versions, so I'm just not going to touch those. We'll look at those when we get the full kits on Wednesday, but today what we'll talk about are all the other units on this list. We'll also talk a little bit about the Master Ability 2s and the job upgrades, so we kind of have a roundup of all the new information in terms of unit upgrades. So first things first, let's look at the job upgrades for assassins, because that's going to be relevant in just a second here. So the first thing is we have Armor Cleaver, which is going to get a upgraded range, and we can see that in a sec here, that has an increased unit uses and also increases your luck for 3 turns. So that is a really good move for an evade unit. The fact that this also decreases defense, does large damage, it's a very powerful skill. Very good. This is going to be like the hallmark skill of the entire class. We also have Heavenly Blade, which is going to be that counter chance reduction for 3 turns, and then after that it's going to deal some damage. So what that does is it makes it all of your skills have a chance to reduce counter chance, so that's really good. We also get a 100% hit on Condensing Blade, and then a better range on Poison Sting. Basically it can just go off diagonally now. The Pilling Blade, is that Pillaging Blade I thought it was called, has a range height increase, and then Assassin Lore gets a slash attack resistance piercing, which is going to be 40%. The interesting thing is that Blood Pact will now give a barrier for Vinera, and then when we see the upgrade to the unit attack resistance for the Dream upgrade, it's actually fairly specific, and then Raphael gets an ability to remove re-raise, but you know, she's still Raphael. So Vinera is the one that's kind of interesting, and we'll take a closer look at her now. Okay, so we got Vinera. She has a Dream ability, a Transcendence ability, and she gets some slash attack penetration, or slash attack resistance penetration, 20%. She also gets 40% from a passive, so she's at 60% innately, which is pretty good. Some more slash attack, and then a upgrade of her final skill. So let's go take a look at that. And basically what we're looking at here, we'll do the translate, is that she gets that barrier that we saw from the job upgrade. She gets more AP, so 30 AP upon using this, and then single target resistance 40%. So if you're getting attacked by a 100% hit and there's no barrier break involved, all of a sudden, if it's a single target, you have to deal with 40 single target resistance and then 50% of a damage reduction from a barrier for 3 times. It honestly means that she's going to be able to survive 100% hits that are single target, and even ones that are AoE, she'll probably be okay with, as long as, again, as they don't break a barrier. So that maybe makes her a little bit more viable as an evader, as we also saw that this Armor Cleaver now has the luck increased, so we get 20% luck. It's just an extra way to increase your evasion. This honestly looks like really great upgrades for her. I know a lot of people aren't very high on Vinera these days. I think that there will be some people that make her shine. I'm not necessarily saying that new players should be investing in her, especially because evasion is just really tricky to work with, but I do think that there's going to be places where we see her, especially in limited guilds battle in an evade team, or maybe just as a solo evade unit. I mean, you can even make Rue and Stern a little bit of 80. So you know what, let's keep an eye on her. I like what I'm seeing here. I think these are some seriously good upgrades. She's a fine evade unit. Then we have Macherie, Queen of Hourne, and this is a very straightforward upgrade, but a very solid one. So 20 spear penetration, always good to just add some of that on. That's just straight up power that you are getting when people have spirit. And then healing power up 15 is actually very relevant for a few reasons. So the first of which is that she does have a healing spell, and she has one that will be pretty impactful in certain guild battles. She also gets an upgrade to her re-raise skill, and let's go take a look at that. So here it is, and the big thing that we can see here is that her healing upon being revived has gone from 20% to 40%, but that's actually going to be increased even more by the 15% healing power up. And if you stack more healing power up, she can recover even more health upon re-raise. And that's really good if she can survive. If she gets re-raised and she takes a turn most likely because of the CT up, but then dies right away, that's a problem. But maybe she can actually take another hit, which would be a really big deal. So the other thing I think is happening here is that if we scroll down, I believe the CT up after re-raise has been increased, so it's even more likely that she's actually going to take a turn. This is a really good upgrade for a great unit, and I think it's really solid. If you use her regularly, then you will want to upgrade her. We also have the regular Glaciela, the launch, well, not launch, but close to launch Glaciela, and it's pretty interesting. Their dream ability, she gets 30% magic resistance, that puts her to a positive 20. She gets some AoE resistance, and then stunning thrust gets upgraded. So what we look at here is a unit that's very strong against slash attack, and then okay against magic and pierce, but then weak to missile and to strike. And honestly, that's still a bit of a kind of a problem for her. But when we go look at that upgrade, it's actually pretty interesting. So it's a 100% with this big ol' AoE here. She has to get quite close first, but then 100% hit chance and 50% chance to stun. So I think this is a pretty big deal. If you can actually stun some party members or of your opponent, then you can really swing a match. I think we're going to see her in limited guild battle again. I don't necessarily think we're going to be able to see her in regular guild battle yet, but you could probably have a lot of fun with her in arena. And I actually saw people using her in arena last week at high levels. So this only makes her better, especially the AoE resistance in terms of surviving in a party. So, you know, sign me up. I think she's still pretty good, but you know, she's not carrying any teams, that's for sure. We also have to look at the dual gunner upgrades, as 2 dual gunners are getting Transcendence upgrades this week. So firing stance, this is the big one. We get more uses and we get missile attack resist penetration 20%. That's a big deal. We also get a 30% hit chance increase for quadruple shot. That's fine. The dual trigger will lower CT, which could be really handy in manual PvP. We get some changes here. So rapid fire gets a height increase, split shot gets an AP consumption down, or horizontal shot gets the AP consumption down. And then we even have dual gunner mastery gets range up, which was a really big weakness for dual gunners. They traded power for range, but that's really too big of a trade-off these days. So we can also see that Spiteful Blast for Lucia will do more damage, and that Rapid Release will have a diagonal range now for Luartha, but also remove haste from the target, which is very relevant as well. So these are important upgrades. It's definitely a job that needed these upgrades. It doesn't push this job into usability, in my opinion, unless it's a sub job. Like these main job units are still going to have a lot of problems, so I really can't say that I'm sold on this, but let's go take a look at those Transcendences and see what's up. The first one up is going to be Lucia, who gets some initial AP 20. This is actually really huge. We all talk about this, that this is a big upgrade. Also some missile attack penetration, which means she can get 40% once she uses firing stance. And then Sadistic Blast, well, what's that going to do? It's actually really good. So this is going to be a decent range move. We can see it's got 5 range, but then you get 1 more range from your passive. You're at 6, and then maybe you use something else like Sniper Posture for her to get another range. You can attack from pretty far away. Now this is very map dependent because, you know, she's a gunner. She's going to have friendly fire if someone's in the way, or, you know, if there's a wall or something, she can't hit them. But what this has now is a 50% chance to inflict slow. And we also saw that it got upgraded to large damage. Now, because it's a large damage, it's only 24 AP. She's going to use this, right? Her auto is going to use this with a very high chance to inflict slow. And slow was a very, very strong debuff. So I think that if there's maps where you can set this up and you can get her going and just putting slow on people, then that's going to be freaking awesome. Like, that's going to be really powerful. The downside is that it's going to be very map dependent. She's going to be very easy to kill. You have to separate her from your party, and with these gunners, they often keep moving forward because they have to keep repositioning to attack people, and that's going to be an issue. So really map dependent, plus you got to spend your Transcendent resources to do this. I don't really see it working, again, unless you're like very specifically tuning it. So have fun with that if you're, especially if you're a manual player, but you can have some fun, but you know, it's not for me. Luartha is in an even worse spot than Lucia, in my opinion, but at least she got some AoE resistance. That's a little bit of survivability still. it's really not enough. And so we got some missile attacks, some more damage. She already was very powerful. Like, she could tear through certain units, but rapid release, what did you give us? What's better? Well, at least now the rapid release, we can see that it takes away that haste. That's fine. And it restores CT 250. So that's kind of cool. So this is a chaining skill. She's likely to go again, and then maybe she can jump somebody if she's fast enough. Thing is that she's not that fast, and it's still like a medium damage move. So I don't really see this being too big a deal. I like that the quadruple shot has the hit chance increase because her quadruple shot has a much higher damage now. So this is just really solid, but it's, again, still low survivability, difficult to maneuver yourself. Her shooting posture, or firing stance as it's known, does not have a range increase, which means she has to get even closer than Lucia does. It's just too much, no matter how fun and strong she is as a unit. Dario is a no-brainer for wind mains that want to play in limited formats because he is just really solid. He's even good in non-limited for specific compositions, and this dream ability with 15% HP, 20 spirit, and then a massive upgrade to Drain Seal. It's just huge. Like, this is just straight up tanking upgrades, and he's somebody that you could actually reincarnate easily because he's an MR, or more easily, and then get a bunch of HP for him too. So let's go take a look at that Drain Seal upgrade. It's going to be 100% hit now. It's going to have a huge damage increase, which means he'll actually use it. It has a spirit buff for himself and a hate buff. He can generate hate with it. This is now a slam dunk skill that means you also don't have to use the Spellblade sub. You do not have to use this for taunting spell any longer. Instead, if you really wanted to, you could use something like Paladin. And the reason that you might use this is to actually use the Saint's Wall for a physical barrier. So maybe you were taking on a more physical meta and you'd rather have the Saint Wall instead of the Magic Wall. Like, that's totally a viable strategy. It also gives you access to the Saint Healing, which actually is relevant for Dario because he's a magic scaling unit and he can heal with this reliably compared to a Paladin that has low magic stats. So Dario's upgrades are insane. If you want a cost limited tank, he's going to be the guy for you, especially if you're already in wind. I can't recommend him highly enough. Raviesse is a sweetheart to a lot of manual players. She's just so solid in manual, and she can be pretty interesting in auto as well, especially if you set her up to do some shenanigans. So what did they give her? Well, 30% AoE resistance. That's pretty good. And then her, whatever that Saintly Cross skill got upgraded as well. So let's go take a look at that. And if you don't know, she is a tank, but also she can be an evasion unit, but also she has Steel Heart, so she can get up to a lot of shenanigans. She has an 8 hate, by the way, in case you didn't know that. But then the Saintly Cross here, what's this going to do? It's going to have a 100% hit chance, which is huge just to have those in those evade versus evade matchups. That can be a really big deal. But then also it has an increased evasion rate now, 60%. So she just needs to get in there and survive long enough to get in there, use this. Her evasion's going to go through the roof. It's pretty interesting. She's a unit that a lot of people really like to use, and she has become better. It's interesting. They didn't really give her very much at all, but at least this 30 AoE resistance is going to help her survive from some big 100% AoE. It's good. It gets a good upgrade. Vallaide is such an interesting unit. He is a master buffer, and now with his Transcendence, you will have no cast time. Well, you'll still have 1 tick to cast, but still, it'll be very quick because 800 cast time reduction is a really big deal. And then he also gets a big upgrade to his main job level 25 buff. So we already knew that we could use this guy in cost limited content to just do some massive counters to ice and wind as elements because of the massive boosts he gives to those resistances, but also to agility, to attack, to magic. And then he also had the guidance of the live ice, which gave ice attack and honestly a very, very generous 60% accuracy buff. But now it's even better. So this is going to give you reaction block rate. It's going to give you protect for everybody, and then also decrease chance of being targeted. So because of this cast time's also been reduced, it's more reliable that maybe he could get a couple of buffs off. If you have everybody coming into buff and he goes last because he's slow and he gets to put off this first buff, then maybe if he stood still, he'll get to cast his second buff. You'll get the resistances up. This is all around a very powerful buff for him. I think that a lot of people should be experimenting with him in limited content because of how how much she can just swing a matchup with these buffs. As long as you don't get dispelled, you can put your team into basically a winning position right from the get-go, as long as, again, you're targeting specific elements with this team. Finally, we have a couple of master ability upgrades. We'll look at them really quickly. Creyse is an interesting MR unit that you can use for selection quests. You can get her from the far plane because she's a free unit. You can also use her for cost limited content, but she's been kind of, you know, outmatched in that aspect. So she gets more survivability with her AoE resistance. She gets kind of like a critical damage, critical hit effect where she gets CT back, which she crits. She gets range up 1 innately. Basically, this might push her, right? If she has more range, she can stand back farther. She can be hitting people with crits, taking more turns, and then doing it again and again. That's actually kind of interesting. I think this makes her worth testing out in the next limited guild battle. It's a good upgrade. All these things are really good, and so we can see if she can kind of climb back to a usable state. We also have Elsirelle, who really doesn't get a lot from her master ability too. It's a lot of missile and pierce resistance, and then slash attack penetration. She needed all of those things, right? So now she becomes an anti-pierce and missile unit, and she has a bit more offense. Like, that's all fine. She still doesn't have that attack, or sorry, that slash attack and magic attack resistances that she needs. Now, if you look at her dream ability, which she does not get yet in global, the 20% HP goes a long way, and more slash attack penetration to go to 40% innate. That's now getting kind of juicy, and the gravity blade upgrade is actually pretty good. So I think maybe when she gets her dream ability, she'll be a little bit more usable. I still don't see her totally usable as a light unit, considering how strong Dark is. This isn't a huge deal. I don't know why they just didn't give her both. Why not give her her dream ability too? It's kind of weird, but what are you gonna do? And then finally, we have the Trick Lancer job upgrades, which is one of the best jobs around for sub job, and a lot of people were hoping that Hio would have this sub job, but he had Lancer instead. So Binding Javelin is a nuts skill. It's so good. Cost less AP now. Okay, that's great. Masterful Melody for that missile attack resistance. It has a better AoE now, and it has even more missile attack resistance. Really good for countering specific teams. Not a huge deal. But then Barrier Break Lance lowers your AP consumption for 1 turn upon a critical hit. This is going to be very relevant for some units, not as important for other units. But I mean, it's more accessible because All Out Assault also gives you crit rate now for 3 turns. So really good buff compared to how it was before. Attack was always fine, but getting that critical hit rate now is a key piece to a crit team. So love to see that. We also have this passive, which was mostly about enhancing your Binding Javelin range, will also give you some more accuracy. So accuracy, super important these days. Love to see it. Luartha also gets an upgrade, so she gets a AP consumption down on her javelin fall. She gets an auto restore on a critical hit. Very powerful for her. You love to see it. That's really neat. Otherwise, this is just all good. Like, I don't even know if this job needed an upgrade. Maybe it did. Maybe you think so. I don't know. I thought it was fine already, but love to see it, especially because I use Psaro. So now he's got even, better skills. So that's going to be it for this video. On Wednesday, I'm going to be reviewing both of the Vision cards and talking about what's rerunning that Wednesday. I'll also talk about the new Transcendent upgrades for the global units and whatever else comes our way on that Wednesday. So look forward to those videos, and otherwise I'll see you in the next one.